Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I can still smell it on my pillow, that faint hint of soap that isn't mine. A bitter, medicinal scent, too sharp, a fragrance meant for a different man's body. The first time I noticed it, I thought I was imagining things, that maybe I'd picked up a sample bottle at the store or someone handed out freebies at the office. But it lingered. Even when I changed the sheets, I caught a whiff as I settled my head at night, a phantom warning that something was already broken. I tried ignoring it for days. I'm the type who hates conflict, always have been. My father used to say, "Speak only when you have something worth saying." The trouble is, you can go too far with that. Silence can rot you from inside. And that smell, it felt like a silent scream under my nose, telling me there's something I've refused to see. I can't remember exactly how I discovered the video. Someone from work, some friend of a friend, tagged me with a sly comment. "Hey, that's your house in the background, right?" I clicked out of curiosity. The clip was short, less than 10 seconds, taken from across the street. A girl with freckles was filming herself dancing in an oversized sweatshirt and high heels, something about a cute moment. Just as she spun the camera around, you could see an intercity bus parked by the curb. And there they were, my wife, Elizabeth, pressed against the side of that bus, hands around a man's neck, lips locked on his, right there between his routes. You could see our front door behind them, and you could see me, out of focus, across the lawn, carrying a bag of trash. I was just in the shot, halfway turned, clueless. I noticed the laughter in the background. Some ridiculous pop music, the sort that goes viral with a silly dance routine. Nothing about heartbreak or betrayal, just some nonsense about cute couples. Then I saw the hashtags. Hashtag Tulsa, hashtag cute news, hashtag randomament. Nothing about affair or cheating. I guess that's why everyone else saw it as sweet or romantic. There were so many comments. "OMG, that bus driver is so adorable." And thousands of likes. I rubbed my eyes and played it again. Yes, that was definitely my home in the background. Yes, that was my wife in that big baggy sweater she always wears with tight jeans and stiletto heels, the outfit that makes her look both laid back and sexy. And yeah, that was me, barely visible, fumbling with the garbage bin. Everyone else had already known, online at least. I was last in line for the truth. I didn't say a word to Elizabeth that first day. I just turned off my phone and sat there in the living room in the dark. Silence. My heart pounded so loud I could hear the echo in my ears. I kept telling myself, "Breathe, damn it, breathe. Don't explode." My father never tolerated shouting or swearing. He used to glare if I so much as raised my voice. That man carved an iron sense of composure in me, so I swallowed my rage and tried to think it through. How did this happen? Is that guy just a fling? How long have I been a bystander in my own marriage? That night, she came home with groceries, humming some pop tune, her keys rattling as she let herself in. I forced a smile, greeted her with a nod. She asked if everything was okay. My voice nearly cracked, but I pulled it together. "Fine," I said, "just tired." She set down the paper bags on the counter. "Do you need anything? I can make you some tea." I stared at her face, that face I used to love unconditionally, that face I told every secret in my life. And for a split second, I smelled that pungent soap again, or maybe it was just on my mind. I imagined it drifting off her skin, off her hair from his bus seat. My stomach churned. "Nah," I said. "I'm good." She shrugged, gave me a small grin. "All right. Let me know if you change your mind." Then she wandered off to the bedroom. I followed her with my eyes, half expecting her to say, "There's something I have to confess." But she didn't. She just disappeared down the hallway, her heels clicking gently on the floor, the same heels I saw in that video. And I thought, she's not going to say anything, is she? I waited another day, half out of shock, half out of denial. Then I got busy. I spent the next few nights on the internet, searching for how to forgive an affair, how to cope with betrayal, psychological recovery after infidelity, and all the usual keywords. I ordered books. I read them one by one. How to forgive and not destroy yourself. Post-traumatic empathy. Stand taller than the hurt. I thought reading about it would make me calmer, or at least help me not to do something reckless, like confronting her in a rage. But what I really wanted was a sense of power, of control. Each passage about taking the higher road just fueled this slow, simmering fury. The words said, "Be the bigger person," but my heart answered, "Yes, be bigger, so you can watch her from above and make her feel small." I didn't recognize that poison in me at first, but it grew quickly. Meanwhile, Elizabeth either had no idea that I'd seen the video, or she was deliberately pretending not to know. She'd come into the living room in the evenings, softly place a mug of coffee on the table next to me, give a gentle squeeze to my shoulder. I'd say, "Thanks," with a polite nod. I'd look up at her, see her face framed by the overhead lamp, and I'd wonder how many times she'd kissed that guy, how many times she'd told him about me, or if she'd lied about me altogether. Then I'd watch her walk away, and that used to be the moment where I'd have confronted her. Some version of me from years ago would have done that. But now, my mind whispered, "Not yet. Let her stew in confusion a while longer." The first move I made was subtle, almost petty. I dug out a photograph of my son from my first marriage. The boy I practically worship. His name is Lucas. He's 17 now and lives with his mother in another state. Elizabeth knows how important he is to me. She's always tried to bond with him when he visits, though it's usually awkward. So I took this photo, him smiling on the beach, about 10 years old at the time, and I placed it on the kitchen counter whenever she brought me coffee or tried to start a conversation. I didn't say anything, just laid it out. She would glance at it, and I'd see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Did she think I was reminding her that I'm a father, that I've known real loyalty, that my bond with Lucas is the kind of love that doesn't crumble? She must have guessed something was up, but she tiptoed around it. I acted pious, quoting from those self-help books. "We all make mistakes," or "Our regrets can become our greatest teachers." I'd speak softly, as though I was reading a sermon. Sometimes she'd nod, looking relieved, maybe hoping I was going through a weird spiritual phase. Each time, I felt a surge of twisted pleasure, like I had the upper hand now. Let her feel that creeping tension. Let her wonder if I'm going to snap. One afternoon, I set up my laptop in the living room and opened the DNA results. I have partial custody of a child from Elizabeth, a boy named Caleb, who's 4 years old. I'd done a paternity test months ago because of some doubts that had gnawed at me, even before all this. We'd never fully talked about it. She insisted there was no need. But after I read the results and saw that 1% paternal probability number, I nearly vomited. I'd hidden that paper away, trying not to tear myself apart. But now, that paternal test was up on the screen, big and bright. She walked in, trying to tidy up some scattered magazines, and froze at the sight. She whispered, "What's this?" I said nothing, just let her stare at the bold letters. Probability of paternity, 1%. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her face went pale, as if someone had yanked her soul out of her body. The entire room felt like a tomb. "You?" She finally forced the words. "You tested him behind my back." I shrugged. I wanted clarity. My voice shook a bit. I needed to be sure. She looked ready to say something else, maybe to protest or beg or apologize, but I just clicked the tab shut, stood, and left the room. I could practically hear her heart pounding behind me. Later that night, she cried quietly in bed, but I lay there stiff as a board, acting asleep, letting her sob into the pillow, letting her wonder if I'd ever be the same. A couple days later, she found me in the kitchen, rummaging for a late-night snack. She hovered by the doorframe, eyes red. I can't forget the raw look on her face. She was trembling, like she wanted to just fall to her knees and confess everything. But she never quite did. Instead, she said, "I love you," in this cracked, desperate voice. My back was to her, and my blood felt like it was boiling. I closed the fridge door, looked at her, and whispered in the most venomous tone I could manage, "Does he get you all the way there too? Or do you only let him drive you as far as Tulsa?" She flinched, covered her mouth, tears gathering again. Don't what?" I said, stepping closer. "Don't ask if you moan for him the same way you pretend to moan for me. Don't ask if you love me or if that's just something you say out of pity." She shook her head, tried to speak, but choked on her words. We stood there, inches apart. I could smell that soap again, or maybe it was the memory of it. I realized my hands were clenched into fists. Part of me wanted to smash every plate in that kitchen. Another part of me wanted to collapse in her arms and beg her to tell me it was a lie. Instead, I just stared at her, breathed hard, and said nothing more. I turned on my heel and left. Let her drown in that guilt. Days stretched on like a slow drumbeat of tension. I kept playing the saint, kept talking about forgiveness, as though I were reading from a counselor's script. We have to rise above our wounds. Anger only destroys us from within. The irony was, behind that forced calm, I was relishing how every mention of forgiveness twisted a knife in her gut. I wanted her to see that I knew but wasn't going to give her the relief of an honest fight or a meltdown. She'd made me the fool in public, but I was going to make her the one who squirmed behind closed doors. Eventually, she confronted me. I was sitting on the porch, flipping through yet another self-help book about letting go of resentment. She stepped out, arms crossed, hair pulled back in a messy bun, face blotchy from crying or lack of sleep or both. She stood there, silent for a moment, as if gathering courage. "You know," she said. I said nothing, just kept my gaze on the pages. "You know, and you're punishing me," she repeated, voice trembling with anguish. "Isn't that enough? Isn't that better than screaming or throwing me out? You're turning me into this disgusting creature. I can't look at myself in the mirror anymore. I feel like I'm rotting inside." I flipped a page slowly. "I told you, I'm forgiving you." "That's not forgiveness," she spat, tears escaping her eyes. "This is torture. You think you deserve better." She rubbed her arms as though a chill had set in. It was still a warm day, but I believe she felt cold all the way to her bones. "No," she admitted. "I deserve worse, probably." I closed the book and studied her face. "But it makes you feel better to say that, doesn't it? That you're just a sinner, that you're worthless. That's your excuse, an absolution in self-loathing." She wiped her cheeks, seemed about to fire back, but then she slumped, defeated. She whispered, "Stop, please." Then she went back inside, shutting the door softly. I stared at the yard, fighting the urge to follow, wanting to inflict more damage, wanting to see her crumble. That was when I realized how far I'd gone. And I didn't care. The old me might have, but that old me was dead. She tried for a while, small attempts at normalcy. She'd buy my favorite coffee, leave notes on the counter that said, "I'm sorry," or "I want to talk." I ignored them. Or, worse, I acknowledged them with little lines from my reading. We all carry burdens. No pain is permanent unless we cling to it. I'd watch as she bit her lip, holding back a storm of tears. And it thrilled me in a sick way, that sense of dominating the emotional battlefield. But one evening, after she begged me to speak honestly, I let slip a more direct cruelty. She was standing by the TV, trying to watch some cooking show, but I could see her shoulders tense. I paused in the hallway and said, "He's got that route from here to Dallas, right? Maybe next time you can ride along and see if he can take you past the city limits of our marriage." I spat the words out, my eyes stinging with tears I wouldn't show. The show played on, the host cheerfully describing how to season a roast, and Elizabeth just stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight. She turned off the TV. "You know, if you were going to forgive me," she said in a low, quivering voice, "then just do it. If not, then let's get a divorce. This is hell." My voice dripped with false piety. "You'll have your penance. Don't worry." Her face twisted with grief and anger. "So that's it. You want me groveling until you decide I've had enough." I shrugged, turning away. "Maybe I want you to feel what I felt." We stood in silence, tension crackling in the air. Finally, she brushed past me toward the bedroom. "I'll sleep in the spare room," she muttered. "I can't stand being next to you like this." For a moment, I wanted to grab her, to hold her, to break down and cry out that I still loved her, still wanted her. But I couldn't. My pride was locked in place, and something darker in me wanted her to keep suffering. The next morning, she was up before dawn, hair disheveled, rummaging in the closet. She yanked out a duffel bag, stuffing clothes into it with quick, jerky moves. I stood in the doorway, my stomach sinking. She'd left once before, briefly, after an argument about something trivial. Then she'd come back. This time felt different. I didn't try to stop her. In fact, I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. "You slept with him, didn't you?" She froze, clothes in her arms. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me," I said, my throat tight. "I want to hear you say it." She threw the clothes in the bag. "You want me to say yes, so you can hate me more?" "Fine. Yes. We slept together. We had sex in his bus once. It was stupid, reckless, all the ugly words you can think of. I'm sorry." Her eyes, shining with tears, locked onto mine. "I've been sorry every day since, but you don't want my apology. You just want to watch me corrode." I stepped back like she'd slapped me. That final confirmation felt like a bullet. I'd known from the video that it wasn't just a kiss, but hearing it out loud shattered another piece of me. My voice wavered. "Why him? Why a bus driver, of all people?" She laughed bitterly. "Because he was there. Because he made me feel alive for a minute. It's not even about him. It's about everything I was missing with you, or everything I thought I was missing." Then I realized how stupid I was, but it was too late. Her words cut deeper than any insult. I clenched my jaw and stepped forward. "So that's my fault." She let out a hollow sound. "It's my fault. Mine. But it doesn't matter how much I blame myself. You've taken this to another level. You think you're punishing me, but you're tearing yourself apart too. And I can't watch it anymore." She zipped her duffel bag and hoisted it onto her shoulder. She walked past me, brushing my arm, the contact almost burning. I stayed rooted in place until I heard the door open. Then she hesitated, keys jingling. "You never forgave me, John," she said, voice low. "You just became worse than me." Then she was gone. I stood in the hallway for a long time, breathing so shallow I felt dizzy. I hadn't expected her to leave that morning. Not when there was so much left to say, so many bitter arguments we'd never finished. Now that moment was stolen from me, that final confrontation I'd been savoring. I felt robbed. I felt even more furious, but also strangely empty, like the poison had nowhere to go. In the days that followed, I let the house sink into silence. No messages from her, no trace of his soap in my bathroom anymore, either. She must have taken it with her. I spent my evenings picking up the pieces, metaphorically and literally. The corners of the house felt haunted by her presence. The sofa where we used to watch sitcoms, the kitchen table where we ate in a forced hush. My bed was mine again, but it still smelled faintly of heartbreak. One morning, I stared at the pictures on the mantel. My first wife, me, and my son, Lucas, all smiling at Disneyland long ago. Then the one with me and Elizabeth, our wedding day, the joy so bright in our faces. How long ago was that? Only 6 years, but it felt like a century. I ran my finger over the glass, not sure if I wanted to smash it or keep it as a reminder. I didn't do either. I just put the photo in a drawer, closed it, and looked around. Everything looked the same except for that presence of finality. She wasn't coming back. Now what? I'll spare you the details of the divorce process. It happened quietly, over phone calls and a few cold legal steps. Our attorneys handled most of it. We barely spoke. When we did, it was about stuff like bank accounts and leftover bills. I never found out if she went to live with him or if she stayed somewhere else. I could have asked, but the truth is, I didn't want to know. I still don't. What I did was throw myself into more reading. But this time, I read about letting go. Real letting go, not the weaponized kind. I realized how I'd spent so much energy trying to be above her. That phrase stuck in my mind. Stand taller than your wounds. But I realized I'd twisted the meaning. Instead of transcending my pain, I'd used it to crush her. And in doing so, I'd become something I hated. Eventually, I started volunteering at a local support group. It wasn't some big, official therapy center at first, just a bunch of folding chairs in the back of a community building. I figured if I could talk openly about my own experience, maybe I'd help other people. Maybe I'd help myself. Week by week, more folks began showing up. Broken men, angry men, humiliated men. And I discovered I had a voice for them. I'd stand in front of the circle, arms folded, trying not to tremble. I'd admit, I've known betrayal, and I've known what it's like to let that betrayal consume me. Some men nodded, some looked away, some started crying. They recognized that darkness. With time, this small group expanded. We moved to a bigger venue, a little resource center for people coping with divorce or grief. I got invited to speak about forgiveness at other gatherings, even some local churches. I spoke about the power of choosing not to lash out, not to remain the victim, without naming names or going into explicit details. I avoided the topic of Elizabeth specifically. I found that the moment I started describing the exact circumstances, I'd get angry all over again. So I talked about the aftermath, about how we pick ourselves up, how we find hope once we realize certain illusions are shattered. The crowd response was something I never expected. Even older men in their 60s and 70s would come up afterward with watery eyes, shaking my hand, saying thank you. I was in that place once, and I never knew how to move on. Younger men, newly married, would admit they feared betrayal more than anything. Some women came too, either having cheated or been cheated on. Somehow, my words seemed to resonate, and in that echo of shared pain, I recognized a piece of my own healing. I wasn't faking forgiveness anymore. I was reaching for it, day by day, step by step. I still refused to mention Elizabeth. People asked me, what happened to your ex-wife? Did she leave for good? Did she regret it? I'd just say, I don't know, and it doesn't matter now. A few folks pried further, but I'd gently steer them back to the bigger picture. You can't heal if you stay fixated on the person who hurt you. I'd say, the real story is what comes after. A year or so into this new path, I got invited to speak at a local men's conference. They billed it as John Hayes, Surviving Betrayal and Rebuilding Your Life. Before I went on stage, I stood behind the curtain, my hands shaking. I thought of Elizabeth again, unbidden. Not with the old anger, but with a pang of sorrow at what we'd lost, what we could have been. Then I took a breath and stepped out to face the crowd. Hundreds of faces stared back, men of all ages, some women too, all waiting for my words. My heart hammered, but I began calmly. My name's John. I know what it's like to see a life you believed in come crashing down. I know what it's like to feel rage so strong that you'd do anything to make the other person suffer. And I've learned that sometimes revenge can rot you just as badly as the betrayal you suffered. I used to think forgiveness was about letting the other person off the hook, but it's not. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of hatred. I paused, scanning the sea of faces. I recalled how Elizabeth had whispered, "You never forgave me. You just became worse than me." That still stung, and it was true. But I changed since then. I'm not here to talk about the person who hurt me, I said. All that matters is what came after, and how I found my way to peace. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, is not an act of weakness. It's an act of choosing to let go of anger, one day at a time. It doesn't make you less of a man. It doesn't mean you condone what happened. It means you value your own soul more than your desire to hurt someone else. The pain won't vanish overnight. But if you can stop feeding it, it'll lose its grip on you. A hush fell over the room. I realized I was trembling slightly, remembering my father's voice telling me never to raise my tone, never to let myself lose control. Here I was controlling my voice again. But it felt different. I wasn't burying anger. I was sharing truth. I talked for nearly an hour. Afterward, a line of people waited to shake my hand, to share their stories. I listened as best I could. Some confessions, some tears, some angry rants. They all wanted hope. They wanted to believe they could claw their way back from betrayal. I did my best to give them what I found, even if it was imperfect. At the end of it all, when everyone left, I stood in the empty hall, letting out a shuddering breath. I didn't kid myself that I was healed, or that I was some guru. I was just a man who'd gone through something that many men go through. I still had nights when I woke up sweating, remembering that damned viral video, or the day I discovered that Caleb wasn't mine by blood. I wondered if she'd told him about me, if the boy knew who his father was. But every day, the regret stung a little less, replaced by acceptance. There's a line in one of those books I read early on. Acceptance doesn't mean you wanted it, just that you acknowledge it's real. That line carried me through the darkest hours. When people ask how I could stand in front of them and talk about letting go of betrayal, I told them it was because I'd realized the alternative was turning into a monster, a man fueled by bitterness, and that monster had worn my face for a while. Funny thing is, I rarely think of Elizabeth now. Sometimes, though, I'll catch a glimpse of a bus passing by, or I'll see a viral video of two people kissing in some random place, and I'll feel this pang in my gut. I'll remember the sound of her voice, the tilt of her head, the quiet moments we once shared. It stabs me, but not because I miss her so much, more because I miss the life I thought we had, the illusions we built together. And that's okay. Mourning illusions is part of being human. I don't claim to be a saint. I know how I used her guilt as a weapon. I've forgiven her, and maybe I've forgiven myself. But I still carry scars. That's something I try to tell the men who come to my talks. You don't get to erase the scar. You just learn to wear it with some dignity, or else you let it consume you. As I stand here now, flipping through my notes for tomorrow's session, I feel a strange calm. The day is bright outside, and I can hear traffic from the street below. Men and women going about their lives, some of them oblivious to heartbreak, some living it every moment. I set my notes aside. They're all bullet points about how to grieve, how to trust again, how to form healthy boundaries. Good stuff, but ultimately just words until you decide what to do with your pain. I'll walk on that stage again, talk about the steps to move forward, to reclaim your sense of self, to breathe without that tightness in your chest. I won't speak her name, because it doesn't matter, and because this story stopped being about her a long time ago. It's about what comes after her. That's what I'm living for now. What comes after all the lies and heartbreak. I've realized the best revenge is not revenge at all. The best revenge is to reclaim your life and refuse to be defined by what someone did to you. If I could speak to the man I was back then, sitting in the dark after seeing that TikTok, I'd tell him one thing. Don't fool yourself into believing you're saintly while you're plotting your next move to humiliate her. It's going to tear you apart, piece by piece, and it won't give you what you think you want. I might not have listened. Sometimes we have to learn the hardest lessons by living them. Sometimes we have to smell that foreign soap on our pillow, watch the person we trusted kissing someone else, break our own souls in the process of revenge, and then wake up alone, battered, and realize there's no peace in cruelty. There's only emptiness, So I focus on the after. That's what I tell the men who come to me in tears, voices shaking with rage and humiliation. When you're done raging, when you're done denying, you'll have to decide who you want to be on the other side of this. The rest is just a slow climb out of the hole. In my mind, I still see her face sometimes. Those tears, that panic when she saw the DNA results, that moment she said, "You never forgave me. You just became worse than me." But I also see my own reflection in the mirror. And I know exactly how right she was. That knowledge used to crush me. Now, it just humbles me, because I've chosen not to stay that way. I finish reviewing my notes, close the folder. Tonight, I'll speak about letting go of blame, about the difference between righteous anger and destructive rage. I'll tell them that I once thought I was above the person who cheated on me, but all I'd done was sink below my own principles. They'll nod, maybe. They'll cry, maybe. And then they'll walk out into the evening air with something to think about. Maybe one of them will decide to call a therapist instead of lashing out at his wife. Maybe another will realize he's not alone. That's enough for me. Tomorrow, I'll wake up, stare at the early light outside my window, and remind myself, you made it to the other side, John. You survived the pain. You survived the taste of revenge. And you're still standing. It doesn't define you anymore. And then I'll brew coffee, take a breath, and live my day, mine alone, unburdened. It's not perfect, but it's free. That's what forgiveness, real forgiveness, tastes like. And if I catch the scent of that foreign soap in my dreams, I'll just exhale and let it drift away. Because coldness is still an emotion, but it doesn't have to be my final one. I'm done letting the smell of someone else's betrayal cling to me. I'm free now, or as free as a man can be. And that's enough.